Hi guys, welcome back to GNG live show. Gil and Gurpreet. Gil is my co-host. I forget to introduce Gil as my co-host. So this is a segment that Gil and I started back last year during the pandemic, and it's still going. And we're going to continue doing these topics on HR, employee experience, and also have guest speakers. So today we do have a lovely person who I didn't even know I was connected with, Jenny, and she's bringing us a great topic that we should be talking about during this pandemic. And offline, we were all talking about it, and it's leading through the stages of the pandemic, the changes, how some people are feeling overwhelmed, especially with all these Zoom stuff and the current situations. There's a Jenny said this the best, and I really resonated. Overwhelm, burnout, stress, uncertainty are piling up, and a lot of us are feeling like this. And then the biggest thing that caught my eye on this topic when Jenny wanted to discuss this was the aspects of leadership that are often forgotten or not associated with leadership at all is forgiveness and fun. Like that forgiveness and fun part, like I forgot everything else, but like that really resonated with me. It stuck with me since last night when I read your email of what you wanted to talk about. It's interesting about forgiveness and fun, how we relate it so much into our personal lives that we don't really relate it into our professionals' life.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So Jenny, you know what? We don't have enough time. And so I always say this, we're going to dive right in because it's only 30 minutes. So take it away, Jenny.
Okay. Thank you very much for having me here. And when I was preparing for this conversation, I looked at the LinkedIn feed or Forbes Coaches Council, Gallup articles, and I was looking for something what people want and need to hear about. And two topics coming up all the time. And one of them was psychological safety, and another one was motivation. And I was thinking about it, but psychological safety is such a vague subject. And for someone, feeling safe might be being in the middle of the night alone in the Algonquin forest, and they will feel the safest. And for someone else, it would be sitting at home under the lock and with the full-blown security system, right? So psychological safety, it's not a formula, it's a continuum. And it's very different for everybody. The same with motivation. And I was thinking, what can it be that is kind of universal for many, many people, no matter where they are in this pandemic? They have work, they lost some work, or it's a lost business, and the variations are endless. And I think I found, and this is exactly what you said, it's forgiveness and fun. And when I'm talking about forgiveness, first of all, let's talk about forgiveness. This is kind of serious one. And when I'm talking about forgiveness, I'm talking about two aspects of it. So first, it's forgiveness of leaders towards their people, towards their employees. And why it's important. The pandemic showed that some of us are losing our energy and our cool faster. Some of us are just thriving, right? That we found the sources of resilience we had no idea we have. But what is common for all these people is to make mistakes once in a while and screw up, right? We all do that. And for leaders to be able, because we are all on edge right now, right? So we all act and maybe react more intensely. So the dramas are just blowing on an empty space, right? So to prevent it and to make people feel safe anyways, forgive for mistakes. This is the most human and I think very necessary first step that allow us to move forward. Because if we do not give forgiveness to people for their mistakes, first of all, we're showing okay, you made a mistake, but I never make mistakes, so I cannot forgive you, which is not true. Leaders make mistakes as well. The second of all, if we holding on to grudges, resentment, so we can't let go. We spend tons of energy and time on something that already happened. It's unproductive, and it doesn't let us to move on and focus on the solution instead of the problem. So I think it's very, very important for leaders out there to remind themselves that they're only human beings in front of them. And for whatever reason the mistake was made, let's assume that majority of our mistakes are not intentional. So if they are, it's completely different story. Yeah. So the people need to be forgiven, and they will feel safe and confident that they will be able to do it better next time. And the second level of forgiveness is forgiveness towards yourself. So leaders toward themselves. And as you were talking about your business development, right, earlier before we started, you said, I kind of dropped one part of my business and I focused on another one. And you were kind of judging yourself, right? So you were harsh to yourself. And a lot of leaders are, because to become a leader on the first place, usually it's people who driving for excellency, right? They work hard, they learn constantly, they take in responsibility on. So they want to present themselves to the world like almighty. But unfortunately, even no one is. Even the superheroes have their flaws, right? Except that they don't exist really. And we need to forgive ourselves, because
I just want to interject. I think us females do that a lot more than men. What's your take on that as a business leader, coach? You see that females are more hard on themselves than men?
You know, what I see is that females are more often to say that, to express that I feel very hard on myself, but they're more willing to talk about it. Men, on the other hand, they often don't want to show any weakness whatsoever.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate, but in the business world, it's still kind of, oh, you're a woman leader. Okay, so maybe you're a little bit too emotional. Like, you're the woman, it's so your excuse. It's not. It's ugly, and it shouldn't be there, but it's still there. Let's admit it. Yeah. So maybe...
I want to add something here, because I love your addition there around self-forgiveness. And I love it for two reasons. One, because I know for me, forgiveness comes hand in hand with compassion. And one thing that I've found is that people who are self-compassionate, understanding with oneself, tend to be then more compassionate with others. That the people who are often harshest on others are, if you get to know them well, are harsh on themselves. They use the same kind of language against themselves that they use with others. So that's the first thing, is that for leaders to have that self-forgiveness, that self-compassion, that allows them to then open up to other people. So that's one side of it, which I really appreciate. The other side is that you highlighted something that I think isn't discussed often enough, which is that leaders are going through this too. They're people too. To use the terminology I always use, is leaders are always also having an employee experience. Mm-hmm. That's the reality. And leaders are going through the same stresses, sometimes more, in terms of dealing with the pandemic, in dealing with the ebbs and flows of what's happening, and to understand that they need to be set up for success. They need to be put in a position, because their influence scales through their group. Yeah. So if they're not being self-forgiving, if they're not having some sort of understanding that, hey, you know what, we all make mistakes. As my grandfather always used to tell me, the only people who don't make mistakes are 6 feet under the ground. And so the rest of us are out here making mistakes, and how the leader then responds to it often gets sourced back to their own capability for self-compassion and self-forgiveness. So I love the way you put that there.
You know, I'm going to interject for a second. I love what Gail just said, and it just got me thinking, how many companies right now are supporting the leaders? How many companies have actually checked on leaders? Because I know for the past year, I've seen a lot of posts, and it's all been around employees. Have you checked on your employees? Have you checked on your employees? Have you checked on your employees? Gail just brought up a great point, and even we haven't done this, Gail. We haven't. I don't think we have. Maybe we have. I don't know. We covered a lot of stuff.
We've talked at or sort of around it, but we haven't had a topic on that specific subject.
We should do a topic on this. Like, yes, great point, Gil. Like, leaders are human beings too, and they are also going through a pandemic. And I think we have neglected the leaders. So, Jenny, thank you.
You're welcome.
For coming on today to talk about this topic, and then a little bit clicking now that, oh my God, yeah, like, how many expectations on leaders are much, much more higher than on employees. And right now, like, we see it so much on social media, on LinkedIn. What leaders are doing now will determine how they treat their employees, and there's so much pressure. But how many have actually even taken a step back and said, my boss is going through a lot too. It must be a lot stressful on my boss during this pandemic, because I know a lot of people in high positions that are working around the clock during this pandemic because of, like, so many changes are happening left, right, and center. Government has, like, lockdowns and this, and it's changing so much. Like, one of my best friends, she's at a director level. She is working right now like crazy hours because of this whole lockdown, and they have to do layoffs and stuff. But yeah, how many people are checking on the leaders?
I'm glad you added that point about change, because that's an additional issue of why Jenny's topic, why that she brought up about leading through the stage, resonated with me so much, because it implicitly shows that leading at this stage, leading in February 2021, is different than it was leading in November 2020, which is different than it was leading in August 2020. And it's constantly changing. So whereas the work environment is changing for all of us, it comes down on the leaders to adjust to these changes, and how they're capable of adjusting to these changes then filters throughout the organization. And that, just to come back to the topic, is why I loved it. It shows that, look, March and April of 2020, that was one thing. How to lead through that time, that was one thing. But now here we are. We've had ups and downs. We've had different false starts and hopes and dashed hopes. And one of my favorite quotes through all of this is, we're all in the same storm, but we're not in the same boat. So some people have had these wonderful highs. Some people have had terrible lows. And a lot of people have felt tremendous pain, and some people have felt minimal pain. And lucky for them, and good for them that they haven't.
I've gone through various stages during this pandemic.
Absolutely. Yeah. And here we are. And so I love, that what Jenny's talking about is that having the psychological safety, whatever that means to the individual, not this unified idea, this, singular monolith of what is psychological safety, because my range of tolerance and comfort is different than Gurpreet's.
Absolutely, yeah.
What I'm looking for and what will make me comfortable and willing to share is just different, because we're just different people. That's the way it goes. And I liked that you brought that up. What are some of the other things that you've seen have helped people manage those highs and lows, because they're going to happen, but smoothing them out is sort of always one of my goals. You don't want the highs, but you definitely don't want you want to ease the lows. They're going to happen no matter what. So what have you found?
So one thing that really helps people, that you mentioned, that leading in these months is absolutely different than leading 3 months ago. But we tend to compare ourselves. I am today, want to be better than I was a year ago, right? So many leaders want to grow, many people, many employees want to grow, but they compare themselves today in the pandemic to themselves before the pandemic, which is two different worlds. So we're not just comparing oranges and apples, we comparing, I don't know, Ferrari and the horse baggy. So we need to forgive ourselves and to smooth those ups and downs of roller coasters. We need to stop comparing ourselves to the times before. Because if today my best is to get out of the bed, turn on the computer and stare at this for half an hour, just putting my thoughts together, if this is my best, maybe 3 months ago, I would say, oh my God, Jenny, like really seriously, what are you doing? But today it's my best. And I have to accept this fact. And I have to stop comparing myself to how I was, because it's two different eras, before pandemic and after. And many leaders, the forgiveness might come if they will also start comparing how the employee were doing, behaving, and acting before the pandemic and now. There's no comparison. Just stop. I think from HR perspective, if companies will cancel their annual performance reviews, which I hate with all my heart.
I understood that.
Yeah, they have to cancel it. There's no performance review. You have nothing to compare it to, really. Unless the pandemic will take another year, hopefully not, right? But we can't compare ourselves to how we were before. So this letting go and focusing on how can I help myself improve tomorrow and stop comparing myself to yesterday, this gives, like this room to breathe. Okay, I'm good. I'm doing my best, and this is all I can do right now, whatever it is.
I love that, because it's about looking not at your past trajectory, but your forward trajectory. And,
Yes.
the one expression I love is where focus goes, energy flows. And if we're constantly looking backwards and looking especially at something that is no longer our reality, we're just siphoning energy away from being able to grow the next day and do whatever it takes. That, you know what, maybe it's a half an hour that I have to stare at my computer today. Maybe tomorrow it's 15 minutes before I can get working. And what can I do to make it 10 minutes the next day, instead of worrying about, it was 0 minutes 6 months ago.
Exactly.
Or wherever it is. We're in a constantly changing environment.
And when we let go,
sorry, I like what you said. And I've been doing this, so it's really like hitting home for me as you talk. Not comparing yourself to where you were 2 months ago, 3 months, this whole pandemic. And I've been doing that lately. I've been comparing myself. You guys already know, because we were talking about this before we went live. And this morning I had to remind myself that, well, we're in a pandemic and things are changing constantly. And in Ontario, we've gone through from, I call it house arrest now, that we're on a house arrest. Like, you legitimately can't leave. Now you can't even leave the country. You know what I mean? Like, they're just, and I was having this conversation yesterday with one of my cousins, and it's so funny. I have to remind myself that, maybe it's this mental thing that we're not allowed to do it, that we're feeling it. Whereas I'm like a person that always did stuff alone. So I don't know why it's bothering me now. Maybe because I'm told I can't do it. And when she said that, I'm like, you're right. I'm like, we've been going through so much emotions, mentally, physically, that I think even leaders are probably amplified for them more. But I think overall for everybody, but I do feel, and maybe because I'm around a lot of leaders, that I feel like their stress level is much more higher during this pandemic than any other individuals in the company, because I think a lot of people don't understand the hard decisions that these leaders have to make, especially the layoffs. That's not easy decisions to make. And I think we don't give a lot of leaders enough credit during this pandemic that, I don't think any leader out there wants to make these calls to lay off people during this pandemic. Any other circumstances, it maybe would be maybe easier. I don't think layoffs are ever easier, but during this pandemic where it's just been a wild roller coaster after another, that I don't think we are giving leaders enough credit, and just taking a step back and saying, well, how difficult must have been for them to make this decision. I think we also are adding a lot of stress to leaders by, kind of like, you laid off people. And now that I'm taking a step back and look while you're talking, and it's like, how many of us are actually taking a step back and just empathizing with the leaders to, well, how difficult must have been that for them to make these calls and then have to walk through the change with the employees and everybody around it. It's not an easy decision to lay off people during the pandemic. So what advice would you give leaders?
So I always remember when I was first time on the plane with my mom. I was a child, and they telling the safety rules. And first of the rule, I was furious about that. She said that first parents have to put the oxygen mask on themselves, and only after that on the child. I was like, oh my God, who created this rule? I'm the child. I need to be protected. You have to put it on me first. And my mom said, you know what? But if I wouldn't put it myself and I will lose consciousness, who will take care of you? And I was 5 or 6 years old. I don't think I really truly believed at that moment in the principle, but it's exactly the same. So leaders now carrying triple the load. They have to care about their businesses, because let's don't forget, bottom line is important, right?
Yeah.
It's why the business exists. They have to take care of the employees, and they have to take care of their families. They also have children running around, popping up in a Zoom, right? So different, like family members who's sick or whatever, right? So they put themselves on the even on the priority list, not last priority, not on the list at all. So we need to, and when I was thinking about forgiveness brings, as you said, Gil, compassion to yourself. And if you will start with ourselves, that, okay, I am down a little bit, but I am a human. I have right to be down like anybody else. That means that other people who look at me, my employees, my team, will know that, okay, as you said, our leader needs help. It creates, I call it interdependent relationship within the team, that leaders is ahead of this team, and people feel empowered. When we helping others, we kind of a little bit forget about our own problems, right?
Yeah.
So
I love that, but that is a paradigm shift for a lot of managers, right? To be interdependent with their team, not that they're separate and above and guiding or telling their team what to do. I love it. I agree with you 100%, but it is a shift for a lot of leaders that to recognize, when we're interdependent, it empowers them, it invigorates them, it excites them about the work they do, instead of constantly being told everything you have to do.
Yes, and forgiveness, it's a great start, because if I drop the fact that I am perfect and almighty, and I just, I forgive myself for all the imperfections, it's easier to accept this fact and accept help. Because yes, it's a huge mind shift for many people, but if they will go this excellence in the perfection, just delete it from their vocabulary and start with forgiveness for themselves and their teams, it will be much, much easier to, embrace this new reality. And if I may add, like the second part of my thinking was fun. And we don't think about fun now. Pandemic, it's the disaster. It's horrible. It's so many people are sick and dying. The last thing we would be thinking naturally is fun. But I really wanted to bring it up. First of all, I'm a fun person. I love fun. It's very natural for me, but it's not for many people. But what is important, do you know that smile is the first social interaction capability of babies who were just born? So smile has no race or social status. It's understood in our brain all over the planet for all people the same way. It releases endorphins in our system. And the small babies who hardly can open their eyes, they know smile. Their brain knows how to smile and that it's good for us. And what endorphins are doing, it's not just the pleasure, like it's usually the concept of hormones of happiness. Endorphins actually relieve pain, physical and emotional, like pills. And they also makes us feel belong and happy. And what happens when we feel belong and happy? We feel safe. We feel empowered. We feel that we can do more. So by having, I don't know, let's look at the Toastmasters, for example, and having for each meeting joke master, right? Someone already invented it. Let's just borrow the principle, right? And bring some fun. It's not just the relief of stress, but it's bonding people together. It creates this interdependency because they're the saying, right? So to know someone, you need to break the bread with someone, right? So I think in this world, because we're all distant, it's not really breaking the bread together, but having some laughs together, it bonds us. It creates the atmosphere and environment of safety and familiarity, which we're really missing right now because everything changes so fast. We need something we can hold on to.
I love
And
that.
connection. I would also add connection to that. It gives us something that to hold on to in terms of this. I mean, we're social creatures by nature. Again, there's individual differences around it, but there's a reason why there are a lot of people who are actually desperate to get back to an office right now, who are just crying to get back to an office right now. But again, talking about the different stages, is there is different views of what is remote work going to be like in the future, and what are the offices going to be like, and we're clearly finding that there has to be some sort of balance, some sort of room for all of the different ways. I want to take a moment and just say thank you to Shiva because they said hi. They said they like my background, so thank you. I appreciate that.
Fun. I love that. And a lot of us are not talking about the fun, like adding fun right now. A lot of past year since this pandemic, a lot of people have said a lot of stuff. You're the first person to say fun. I haven't come across anybody. That's just my perspective. That I haven't seen anything along the lines of fun, like Zoom this, happy hours, but that may not be fun for somebody. But fun, yes. Like I love that to the point where we should be thinking about fun because everything is so, pardon my language, but so damn stressful right now. Mentally, physically, emotionally, like everything. And even normal people right now feel so drained, and sometimes we may feel like depressed because it's just such an unusual time. And fun is something that a lot of us have not looked into and saying, well, what can I do that's fun? It could be being a kid. I started to do this, by the way. Like I just started laughing. I'm like, you know what? I need to just laugh. If it's stressful, I'm just gonna laugh. If someone's annoying me, I'm just gonna start laughing. Like I started incorporating this like a few weeks ago, and it's funny. I say everything funny, but it's not funny. But it's just like it's so amazing that you're talking about it, and it's something I just started incorporating. Fun.
Even so you are the living example that it's working, right?
Yeah, it does. It has helped me a little bit. Like it has helped my mood. I used to dance a lot growing up, being a kid. Like just put music and dance. It used to be called a dancing queen. I love dancing. So recently, I was like, I need to act like the way I was when I was a kid. I wasn't allowed to go out. I was brought up in a very traditional Indian family with strict rules. Wasn't allowed to go out. I still had fun. I'm like, I need to go back to my childhood. What did I do when I was a kid? Danced, joked around, just being a kid.
I think my my last thing, because we do have to wrap up here. One thing I do want to add on that is that right now, having fun, we have to give ourselves permission to have fun.
True.
That I think is something that's missing because people feel the need to be dreary. And you see it all the time where somebody will post something fun or something happy that happened and people will attack them because like, oh, things are miserable right now and you have to be miserable. It's like, no. Much like some adults need to give themselves allowance to have fun because they forgot that adults can still have fun. It's not just for kids. Also, during a pandemic, it's not going to be always fun. It's not belittling the pain other people are going through. But if we don't have that fun and smiles and laughs, then what are we living for here? So, I mean, I'm totally with it. Jenny, I want to thank you so much for joining us. This was a really great perspective. One of the times I can actually speak on Gurpreet's behalf, and I could say this was definitely eye-opening for her and for me, and just really a great perspective that's not always talked about in the business community and in the business world. And I really just want to say thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Jenny. I'm speechless. I'll just go with everything Gail said. It's just an amazing topic. And thank you so much for coming on and shedding light on something that even I didn't even know that we needed to talk about. But yes, thank you.
You do now.
Yeah. And you kept it so simple. Forgiveness, fun. You didn't complicate it. And a lot of times I think we also complicate things, but thank you for keeping it so simple. Forgiveness, fun. Pandemic.
Thank you very much. And keep dancing.
Yes.
Keep dancing.
I danced before coming on this show.
Oh, cool.
Need to release some stress. But thank you so much. And thank you everybody for tuning in. Hopefully you have liked this segment. Now, Jenny, just before we sign off, how can someone reach you?
So the fastest way will be on LinkedIn, Jenny Barken. You have a link on the post. And just send me a message and we can connect and have a chat.
And
it's worth it. Jenny's awesome.
We just give a little snippet of what you do because we actually didn't talk about what you do before we the topic.
So I'm business coach. I am focusing on leadership skills training and a little bit of employee experience as Gil does. But my specialty is leadership skills development. So if you have an emerging leaders within the company and you don't want to look elsewhere, but you need to bring them up, probably I will be the person to call.
All right. So there you guys have it. That's Jenny. If you need to connect with her directly. Reach out to her on LinkedIn. It was a pleasure, Jenny, having you. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak on such a great topic. We will be back next Wednesday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time with another great topic. And we will confirm as soon as we confirm the topic. But we will be back at 1:30. Everybody, please take the time we're going to stick to the topic, forgiveness and fun. So on that note, we're going to end the segment. Take care, guys. Bye. See you guys next week.